guys, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how I did this snakeskin ombre. I actually did something really similar before and a lot of people really liked it. So when my client wanted this, I was like, yes, have to record. So yeah, I'm just gonna be starting off by removing the shine from the nail. You can start off with pushing the cuticles back, but I really only push them back if they have like an excess amount of cuticle. She didn't really have that much, so I just go right in with the sanding band, and whatever cuticles on her nail will be removed with the sanding band. It'll just help you save time. Sometimes they don't really have that much cuticle. You don't need to push it back first because the sanding band will definitely take it off. I left the first couple fingers in real time. I didn't cut anything off of it so that you guys could see how long it actually takes me to remove the shine. You just want to make sure that you have your speed really low for this so that you don't drill too hard into the nail. You don't want to burn them if you leave it in one spot too long. So just go back and forth all around the nail. Make sure you get the sides. You're not trying to thin it out. You're really just trying to make sure that all the oils are gone. So that's what we're doing here. The drill that I use is from Melody Susie. I'll link it down below. I really like it. I've been using it since I started taking clients. And yeah, so if you use the Melody Susie drill, I basically keep it under 3,000, I believe. There's little numbers on it. I'll put a little picture on the side and I'll circle where I keep my speed on when I'm removing the shine. And then my sanding bands are just from Amazon. I'll link that below too. You can really get sanding bands from anywhere. They just have to be fine grit, which is like 180 grit, fine. So after we remove the shine, we're just going to start applying our tips. So you guys can see me doing that here. Honestly, my head was in some of the frames, so I had to cut some pieces out, but you guys get the gist. You see me like file the sides a couple times. So basically, if you're deciding between a tip that's too big and too small, always go with the one that's too big because you can just file the sides and then make it fit. You want to make sure it's sidewall to sidewall completely. So yeah, you guys can tell sometimes my head was in the way. In future videos, I don't have my glasses on, so don't worry. But yeah, we're just going in and putting the tips on every finger. And the tips I use, I will link below. They're supposed to be like coffin shaped. I don't know, honestly, every single time I get them, sometimes they're little coffins, sometimes they're a little more square. So it's pretty good. I mean, I like them. It's easy to shape because they're not super wide, but if she wanted them any longer, it's kind of hard to make them it's kind of hard to make them square because they're kind of already coffin. So yeah, that's the only thing. I'm starting to use different tips, but I mean, they work for me. They're good for the most part. I really like them. So yeah, she wanted to cut the number off. So you guys will see me just, I cut the number off of the pointer finger, and then I just sized every other finger with that finger to make sure that they were all the same length. And after that, you can see now I'm starting to shape them. She wanted them tapered squares, so I'm really making sure that I keep my file nice and straight. You don't want to curve it outwards or inwards. You want to keep it straight and file back and forth. You guys can kind of see, just make sure that you're looking at it from all angles. Don't just go through the motions, like file one side, look at it, file the other side. Make sure that you're actually watching what you're doing and not just doing it because you think you should. And I'm using an 8080 grit file. It's from my local nail supply, but they do have a website. So if you guys wanted to order that, I'll also link that below. Another thing that you guys will see me do here and there, and you guys just saw me do it, was I use my drill to also get my shaping. So sometimes your shape will look really good. It's just that there'll be a little excess piece underneath the nail that you might want to take off. So I kind of use my drill bit to also help me shape. So that's a little tip that you guys can use. If you don't want to get too close, if you're afraid to get too close to their skin on one side, just use your drill bit and that'll definitely help as well. Also, make sure when you're filing that you definitely hold the skin back so that you don't cut them. You can see each side that I'm filing on, I'm holding the side. So if anything, I'm filing my finger, not theirs. And then here you guys can see me go back in with the drill bit. I'm just cleaning up the sides. And then I just keep looking at it, making sure it's nice and straight. Again, I'm so sorry that my head is in the frame. It's not like that the whole video, but... And then another thing, like I said, these tips are kind of coffin. So obviously when you cut the tip, they're more square, but for the pointer finger, it was looking a little bit coffin when I shaped it. Like the tip just wasn't wide enough. So you'll see me fix that once I start applying my acrylic. I just kind of widen it out on the sides with the acrylic to make it a little bit more square because it was just the slightest bit coffin for me. But when I get to that part, you guys will see what I mean. So after I finish shaping all of my tips, I am just blending the tip with the nail with my sanding band. So I'm going to go over right where the natural nail and the tip meet and just make sure that it's nice and flat. If you're first starting, you can just run your finger over it and make sure it doesn't feel bumpy. You want to make sure that it's smooth and you can't feel the difference. But at this point, I'm used to it, so I can kind of just look at it and tell if it's the way that I want it to be. Another thing that I forgot to mention is I don't cut my tips with a tip cutter. I always cut it with that little scissor that you guys see. I just feel like it's easier with the tip cutter. I feel like it's always cutting curved or crooked. When I use my scissors, I just feel like I can do it way better. I don't know, it's just easier for me. So If you have trouble with the tip cutter, you feel like it's hard to cut them the same, or it's hard to tell if you're cutting them the right length, try a little scissor. I really like it. I'll link that down below as well. When you guys are blending the nail, just make sure that you're not filing their natural nail. You really just want to focus on the tip. So I know you guys see me going up and down, but I'm not even really touching their natural nail. So just make sure that when you're doing that, you're really focusing on the tip. Okay, so now we are getting into application. So here I'm using Mia's Secret dehydrator and primer. So I'm going to dehydrate all 10 nails one time, and then I'm going to prime 2 times. So when I use the primer, I only do one hand at a time, just because the primer is sticky, and the most annoying thing in the world is if your client has to grab something when the primer's on it, and then they bring their nail back and there's lint and everything all over it. So just to avoid that, I only prime one hand at a time. So that's what I'm doing here. The powders I'm using for the nude that I use for every single nail, for the ombre and the plain nails, I use Valentino's Perfect Nude. And then for the clear, I'm using Mia's Secret Clear. My brush is from my local nail supply, so that'll be linked down below. And then the snakeskin decals are water decals, and those are from Etsy, which I'll also link. I prefer to use water decals because transfer foil just never works for me, so I really only use water decals. So you can see here in that left corner, I have a little cup of water. So I just placed my decal in there while I started with the ombre. So that decal, it looks white, but when it slides off, it's actually clear. Whenever I did it the first time, I put nude under it, and she wanted it just like that. So that's what I did here. I'm putting my nude, a thin layer of nude, so that I could put the decal on top of it. So that's what I'm doing here. You just want to make sure that you put your bead right where you would put your ombre. I put it where the tip and the natural nail meet. And then I just work it down. I always hold the finger down so that gravity kind of pulls it that way. So once we do that, I'm just grabbing my water decal. You're going to see me pat it dry a little bit on that paper towel. And then I'm going to place it on the nail. My acrylic had dried a little bit, so I just put a little bead of clear just so that it would stick, because my acrylic had already dried. So once I do that, you'll see me place down the decal. I'm just positioning it to how I want it, trying to make it straight. Remember, this is going to be ombre, so that's why we're only putting it on the bottom half of the nail. And once I get it on there, I'm just going to cut the sides. So from here on out, I'm really just trying to make the decal nice and smooth. So I'm just patting it into place, cutting the sides, trying to get as close to it as I can. When I cut the top of it, where the ombre would start, I ended up cutting it a little bit more than I realized I wanted to after I cut it. So it still came out super cute. But if you guys recreate this, I would recommend just leaving it at the top where your ombre should have started. I kind of cut a little bit short. Okay, so now we are starting on with our plain nails, the nails that are just going to be all nude. So I did a 3-bead method. So I'm placing my first bead again where the natural nail and the tip meet. It's like a medium-sized bead because this is the pinky. And I'm just keeping it on the nail, swiping the sides, letting gravity pull it down, do its thing, letting it kind of dry up a little bit. I don't want to just drag the whole thing down immediately because it won't be the same thickness throughout. So I kind of just let gravity pull it down until it hardens up a little bit, and then I start swiping it, cleaning up the sides. You really want to keep that shape because it's definitely going to help you in the end. So yeah, and then I'm just going to cut the bottom with my brush, just the way that you've seen it. I'm using a size 10 brush, by the way. So yeah, also one thing I do for the bottom so that it's not so thick at the tip right there is you can kind of see I'm kind of pushing it flat. I'm making the tip a little bit flatter. Now I'm picking up my second bead. This is a smaller bead than the first one. I'd say it's pretty much on the small side. I did drain my brush for this one. I usually drain my brush after every bead that I pick up, so it's not too wet and runny. So yeah, I just placed my bead right above the first one, kind of let it harden up a little bit, and then you don't want to swipe too hard. You really just want to blend it into the first bead that you made so that you can keep that same thickness all the way throughout, and then just constantly wipe the sides so that you can keep your shape. So for my last bead, I'm taking a small bead and I'm going to place it right above the last one, close to the cuticle but not directly on it because you want to be able to control where it's going. So I'm putting it close and then I'm going to push it into the cuticle. Once I get it as close as I can, I am swiping it down and just blending it in with the other beads. You want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and not bumpy. And then I'm just going to continue to wipe the sides. After I do that, I'm moving on to my ombre. So I'm placing my first bead right on top of the snake skin. I'm going to blend it downwards. I ended up doing 2 beads for this nail, so I made my next bead a little bit big because I didn't really get the blend that I wanted with this bead. So you're going to see me just grab a larger bead for this one. Like I said, my head was kind of in the way of some clips, so I had to cut some out, but I basically just played around with it until it cured a little bit, and then once it cured to my liking, I just swiped it down to get a good blend. But you'll see me do it on the next nail. And for the next nail, I ended up doing 3 beads, so you're going to be able to see how I did my ombre with 3. So again, I'm just going to take my first bead and place it right where that snakeskin stops. Blending it downwards. You also want to make sure that you flatten out the top of it so when you put your bead on top of this one, it's nice and seamless and flat. So I'm just blending that in. And then I'm going to grab my next bead and place that right on top of this one, a little bit higher up. I'm going to follow the same steps. Just keep the bulk of it where we put it, pat it in place, and then start to blend it downwards using really soft strokes. You don't want to blend it too hard because you don't want to swipe all the acrylic off. And then for my last bead, the same way we did the cuticle bead for the pinky, we are going to place it close to the cuticle but not directly on it and just push it in just like that and then blend it downwards. Like I told you guys from the beginning, this nail was kind of giving me coffin vibes, so I had to fix that. So you guys will see, like, I kind of dragged the acrylic over a little bit on the right side to make it look more square. The left side was fine. It was more the right side that needed a little extra something to make it look coffin. So that's basically what I'm doing here. And then I just cut my tip. Okay, so I don't always do 3 beads. Sometimes I'll do 3 beads or 2 beads, just kind of depending on what I'm feeling. So for this finger, I ended up doing 2 beads. So I basically just kind of grabbed another medium-sized bead and I placed that close to the cuticle but not directly on the cuticle, so you guys can see how I pushed it up into it so that it would be flushed and it'll just blend right with it. I'm making sure that I clean up the sides so that it's not anywhere on the skin. You want to make sure you keep it off the skin. That's going to cause lifting. So I'm just cleaning up the sides, blending it in so it's nice and flat. You don't want it to be bumpy. Just be very, very gentle with the acrylic. Pushing it into the cuticle, make sure you're always holding the nail downwards so that gravity can pull it down and you can keep the same thickness throughout the whole entire nail. I saw that I needed to fix my apex a little bit, so I just added a little bead right there to build up my apex. Now we're going back to our 2 ombre fingers to encapsulate. I always encapsulate with 1 bead. I don't feel like it makes sense to do 3 bead to encapsulate. 1, because that's just going to take way too much time. 2, because you really just want a super thin layer when you encapsulate. My nail is not super flat, so I pretty much just need to cover it. I'm not really trying to make the shape. So, and even if I am, I just always encapsulate with 1 bead. It's going to save you so much time. Yeah, it's so much easier that way. So I just take a good medium-sized bead and place that by the cuticle. You guys can see I'm holding the finger downwards and just swiping it down to cover the whole nail. You want to keep it nice and flat. Again, like I said, just make sure you're being very gentle. You want to keep wiping your brush off. If you need to wet your brush a little bit, you can do that too. You just kind of got to play with the acrylic. You guys can also kind of tell my acrylic was drying a little bit quickly. So once it does that, I just started applying a little bit more pressure to make sure that I covered the whole nail before it completely dries. But I pretty much did it in perfect timing. You'll get it. You just have to keep practicing for real. Okay, so now that we have finished applying our acrylic, I did the same thing to the other hand. I'm just showing you guys one because if I show you both, we're going to be here forever. So now that I finished that, my acrylic is dry, I'm just starting to file. So I basically go through 3 rounds of filing. I start off with my hand file. I really suggest everyone do this. It's just the easiest way to make sure that you have no bumps. You can make it nice and flat. You guys will see I'm just filing over the top and I'm filing the sides. I don't file the tip yet. I just file the sides, file the top, make it nice and smooth. I stay away from the cuticle area. I get as close as I can without touching the cuticle because you want to make sure that you seal your cuticle with your drill bit. So for right now, we're just focusing on making the nail nice and smooth. So after I make all the nails nice and flat, you can see I did all 10. I'm going in with my drill bit. So I use a fine drill bit all the time. If you're a beginner, you can start with extra fine just to get comfortable with it. But the first thing I'm doing is just removing the lines from the nail that I made with the file. So I just go over it real light with the drill bit. And then I'm really just trying to focus on the cuticle here. So I'm getting as close as I can. You want to get super, super, super close. So just definitely take your time if you're just starting. You don't want to cut them. So just be super careful, but you definitely want to get close. When I first started, I was using a safety bit. I really don't recommend that anybody use a safety bit. There's no way possible to get close with a safety bit. Like, you really just have to bite the bullet and get comfortable with a regular drill bit, because that's the only way you're going to be able to seal the cuticle good enough. So after I do that, I also go underneath the sides just to make it nice and smooth and kind of give it a little natural curve. And I go under the tip. You guys saw me do that as well. Okay, so after I finish using the drill bit on all 10 nails, I'm just going back in with my hand file, cleaning up the sides one more time. So you're going to see me just reshape the sides on all 5 fingers. And then after I do that, I'm going to flip the hand over and file the tip straight. And then for the thumb, I don't actually do it that way. You're going to see I flip her hand back over. And for the thumb, I filed the tip like how I filed it in the beginning when I was shaping the nails before I applied the acrylic. That's how I filed the thumb. I actually didn't show it, but that's how I filed the thumb. So this is what the nails look like. So when she finished washing her hands, we just applied our top coat. I'm wiping the sides. We applied our cuticle oil, and this is the final look. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on all my social media, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.